Hey guys, Kagoe here, back for a new yearly video, and today we're going to be drawing Lisa Trevor from Resident Evil. She is in the GameCube remake, so if you're a fan of the original game, you might be confused who she is. Well, she only really appears in the GameCube remake. Technically, I think she is in like at least one other game of Resident Evil, but like not a mainline story. This is kind of like her main feature. So first things first is we're going to ink the outlines. One thing you might notice from my drawing videos is I don't really film the pencil stage. That's because the pencil stage is kind of boring, I'm not gonna lie. When I pencil, it's usually the most tedious part because I'm constantly erasing, drawing again, erasing, drawing again. And if I included the pencil stage, I feel like half the video would just be me doing that. So the ink I use is always gonna be waterproof because I'm gonna have to paint over it in the later stage. My go-to is Dr. P.H. Martin's or Higgins. I used to use Winston Newton waterproof inks for like the longest time, but in recent times I've sort of moved towards P.H. Martin's. Fucking Dr. P.H. Martin's. I forget he's a doctor. Anyways, his black ink has a really nice matte finish, which I think suits the style much more. When I want to use coloured inks, that's when I use Higgins, because they have a really nice range of all waterproof inks, and it just makes the line work more interesting rather than just always using black. For the ink wash, I have like a jar of like watered down ink. It's Winston Newton ink because it's like not as expensive. But it's really good for ink washes because I always have it readily available. I forget what the ratio is, but basically it just adds a really nice layer of grit to all my watercolor paintings. It's also good, so it's basically like a way of like mapping out where I'm going to paint shadows in the next stage. I really love the ink wash stage because you're basically seeing the drawing come to life. I feel like the most terrifying part of this drawing process was when I started applying liquid watercolor. Liquid watercolor is basically dangerous, at least it is to me. I'm not very experienced with it, I'm still very new to it, and the colors are so vibrant, it's like overkill really easily. This painting of Lisa was basically the first time I properly used liquid watercolor. I need to like try, I keep saying the word basically. Basically this, basically that. I'm not great with voiceovers. I always feel like I don't want to say most of the time. I mean, you're watching me do it. What else can what can I add to the conversation? Like, I'm just explaining to you what you're seeing, okay? The thing with liquid watercolor is it's a lot more vibrant than what I'm used to using. Most of my paintings, I use watercolor pans, which are basically those like little rectangles you see, and they're dry. It's a completely solid medium until you add the water. Whereas obviously liquid watercolor is already liquid, it's already ready to go, and it's so potent with color. And it's my job as an artist to make sure that the colors aren't overkill, because if everything is vibrant, then it just looks super saturated, and to me, it doesn't look very pretty. You sort of need that contrast to bring it down to depth. My theory for using liquid watercolor for this painting was I can sort of tame it by applying a super vibrant layer at first, using the masking fluids to trap that vibrancy, and then I start painting over with darker colours. So it will start off looking super bright, super in your face, and then I just slowly tame it. To apply the masking fluid, I basically use this rubber-tipped brush. I find a brush tip a lot easier to use than the ruling pen, which most people use masking fluids. If you're not sure what a ruling pen is, it's basically like a metal tongue, and the masking fluid just like goes between the two metal tongs and you can sort of adjust the width of it. With a brush tip, I feel much more free to use it, and because it's similar to a regular brush, you can sort of create similar effects that you would use when you're painting, which I think is really cool. The masking fluid stage of this painting was super tricky. As you can tell, it was done freehand, and it's almost invisible. Like, masking fluid is basically a similar consistency to PVA glue, if you remember that from school. It's like, it dries really quickly, so you can sort of see it, and then the moment it dries, it goes to like a see-through consistency. And the way I can still sort of judge it is it has like a sort of reflection from certain angles, but otherwise, I have to sort of hope and guess that I'm applying it in the right places. This whole stage of applying the masking fluid, adding more colours, dripping, adding more colours, I was basically trying to think of a way to make the background interesting without overshadowing Lisa. which is tricky to do, especially considering liquid watercolor is the background, and it's going to be a lot more vibrant than the paints I'm using to paint Lisa. Random plug-in, if you'd like to support me making art like this and more comics, please check out my Ko-fi, I'll link it down below. I basically post a bunch of behind the scenes stuff there. A little watercolour tip I recommend that I've been using since I was a teenager is use gravity to your advantage. So while the painting is still wet, I will lift the painting and I keep applying paint. This will naturally push the paint towards the bottom of the painting, creating a sort of drip effect. How strong you want that drip effect all depends on how much you tilt it and how wet the paint is. It's one of those things where you can create cool effects with it, but it's really easy to overdo and just sort of make it look tacky if you don't do it right. So at this stage of the painting, you're probably wondering why I've drawn Lisa as a goth girl and not as a horrific scientific monster. Well, that's because this painting is based on my Resident Evil comics, which is like set in an alternative universe, and in the comics, this is how Lisa looks. I kind of wanted to parody the internet's obsession with turning things into cute women, and it was almost like a personal challenge of like, how could I make this character cute? When she's basically renowned as this like tragic figure in Resident Evil. And I kind of like the absurdity of it. I think it played into the humour, but then later on in my comics, it also helps play into humanising her. Where when she's first introduced to my comics, people think it's like just another gag, where it's like, haha, she's a goth. But then I think it sort of helped humanise her during the more serious moments, by being able to see her face, by being able to see her expressions. And it sort of helps remind the audience that like, behind all the gore, the human masks, there is a girl there who was senselessly tortured by an evil organisation, and she still has a heart, even if she has a bunch of back tentacles. And yeah, that's the painting finished. And here is the finished painting of Lisa Trevor. You might be wondering where the rest of the drawing footage is. Well, truthfully, I stopped filming because the last footage you saw was the last thing I filmed, because after that I thought I'd ruined the painting, so I was just like, that's it, this is a scrapped idea, we're not gonna film anymore. And I just kind of did the rest of the painting at like late at night, being like, I'm just finishing this for myself, I'm just finishing this just so I can see it out, see what it looks like. But I was like so defeatist. And then once I finished the painting, I sent it to my friends and was just like, I can't do art. I can't draw. Which is kind of crazy, because looking at this, it's not as bad as I remembered, but in the moment, I just remember being like, this isn't as good as I wanted, this isn't how I planned it to look. So I just kind of like fell into a pit of despair.
It's over. I'm done embarrassing myself.
I can't do it! Why do you even want me?
And after I messaged my friends, basically being like, hey, I think I should quit art, they were like, well, first of all, they said that was crazy. And secondly, they were like, look, breathe, try again. Like, one painting shouldn't define you as an artist, you know? Like, I feel like improving as an artist isn't linear. You're gonna have, it's like, you know, every painting I make isn't going to be better than the last. There's going to be bumps in the road, and you just have to keep going. You can't be like, well, that's it. You know, your talent just magically disappear because you've had a bad day at the office. I think what really got me frustrated about this painting is, so when you do the plan isn't A4 size. The measurements in my sketchbook wasn't exactly these measurements. So in my sketchbook draft, how I wanted it to look, it was wider on the sides, you know? So I've had to stretch out the design, which I think kind of makes it look like, I feel like Lisa's too small in the middle. There's a lot of empty space up here. And I originally did kind of want to crop it like that. Like, I think it would have fit better if it was more like, if I crop it like that, right? But I wanted to make sure that her handcuff, well, not handcuffs, but like, I don't know what the term is, handcuffed board thing. I wanted to make sure that was in shot because I thought that was integrative to her character. And to not include it, it's like, it felt, at the time even, the wrong thing to do. So I had to keep it there. But for me to keep it, I had to draw more of her body than I kind of wanted to. I wanted to have her just more zoomed in, but I couldn't do that. Well, at least I struggled to do that with the A4 measurements. And it's one of those things, you don't want to be too busy, like, what, I could put more skeletons up there? It's like, no, because then it gets too busy, and I kind of wanted these 2 skeletons to represent her parents. And all these skeletons here to represent the scientists that she killed who tried to become her parents. But they didn't try to become her parents, but they tried to, like, imitate her parents. So I thought it'd be cool to have her actual parents, the main skeletons, and then a pile of all the skeletons of the scientists that fucked with her, experimented on her. So, like, there was, like, intent there. Like, it made sense at the time, but I don't know, I think I'm just a bit insane, aren't I? And yeah, I think that's the end of the video. Let me know down below what you think of the painting, what I should draw next. And whatever you want to put down there. I'll probably read it. I'm gonna read it. So think twice before you write. Okay, bye.